Guten Tag und Glückwunsch zum Geburtstag. Yeah, I just badly pronounced happy birthday in German. Just got tired of saying hello and welcome. This video covers the brand new Workshop 3 activity, which is catapult testing. Now, these catapults are going to come pre-built. Your campers are not going to be campers. Your students are not going to be building them. They're just going to be testing a couple of different kinds of ammunition in this activity. And this is to get around some ideas of hands-on data collection. You will probably have had some pretty chaotic stuff going on with airplanes last week, and some of the kids may have forgotten to write down their information, which is a really good lesson. Like, hey, we don't have data if we get so excited about throwing airplanes that we don't write it down. So in this one, we want to really emphasize in making sure we get accurate data and spending a little bit of time talking about what the data means and what we can do with our data. And we're going to use catapults to do this, which can be kind of chaotic, any projectiles in the classroom, but we've selected ammunition that should limit the chaos to a certain extent. Your ammo is going to be pom-poms, wadded up paper, and pony beads, which I seem to have lost my pony beads. Pony beads! So you'll have a bunch of these, 2 different sizes of pom-poms, big pom-poms, although your pom-poms won't be sparkly like this one. Little pom-poms, little beads, wadded up paper. To keep the paper uniform, we're going to be using these little Post-its, so give them a couple of these to wad up. Make sure that they only wad up 1 though. If they do 2, they'll have twice as much mass. So there is a worksheet for this activity called Catapult Data Collection Activity, which is 2-sided. So before you actually give them their catapults and their supplies, as we learned in the mystery box activity, you're going to want them to do this whole first part of the page. Now, if you have little kids, that they don't have to go into super detail. But this lists what kind of supplies they'll have. They'll also be measuring tapes so they can measure distance, but these projectiles, I've tested them several times, they don't go very far. They usually go between 12 inches and 5 feet. They'll also need a pencil to supply themselves. And so they should make a hypothesis of which of these 4 projectiles do they think will fly the furthest and why. Farthest, not further. And why do they think that is? Just, a quick description of like what properties of the particular projectile do they think might influence the way that it flies. And the ultimate, if we were going into the science of this activity, we'd really be looking at mass versus surface area, which hopefully they'll kind of tap into, but you don't need to worry about so much. And so there's a little table we want them to fill out here, which has each item listed, any properties of the item that they'd like to list, like it's very light, it's very fluffy, it has a lot of, they may not use the phrase surface area, but you can introduce that to them if they're like, well, it's got a, it's sort of big around. The irregularity of the wadded up paper, the pony bead is kind of hard. So any characteristics they think that might influence the way that it's going to fly. Just a quick ordering of which they think is going to go furthest. So the one they think that's going to go furthest should be 1, and the one they think that's going to go least should be 4, even though the sheet says 1 to 5. And then I want them to write down who's going to launch each item and who's going to record the data, just to make sure that they're very clear that everybody on the team gets a turn to launch something, and that there's a designated person to be watching where it goes to. And this is for a couple of reasons. One, they'll get so excited about wanting to launch that they won't collect the data. They'll like run out and pick up the item before they measure it. So there needs to be someone who's like, no, I'm responsible for measuring it. Also to have a spotter, because especially if they have hard floors, if it's carpet it's not so bad, but some of these will bounce and roll, particularly the pony beads. So particularly for the pony bead, they should be watching like where it hit, as close to as they can to measure. So we want to make sure that they actually get their data, that they don't just launch the pom-poms and not have the actual data to work with. Now everybody, these catapults are a little wobbly. We're going to put a stabilizing part back here too, so it'll make them a little less wobbly. But everybody should get a practice fling, just so they get the feel for how to fling it, because it's really easy to overturn the catapult if you don't know what you're doing, like that. So you get a practice fling, and then they should fling each object 3 times. And we're going to use that. We're not going to do averages. You can if you're in the older classes who know how to do averages. By all means, have them compute an average, but we're going to actually do kind of a little error bar thing with our graphing. This just helps, work out the kinks of, having a bad toss and getting a, a more reasonable measure of central tendency. So make sure that they've designated. So Once they've completed this chart, the group should put their hand up, and you can come over and say like, okay, so what do you think is going to go farthest? Why is that? And who's doing what? And if they've got that clear to you, and if they've got a larger group, if they got more than 4 or less than 4 in their group, you can repeat some measures. That's fine. You know, they can do the big pom-pom twice or whatever. Or if they propose an item that they have on their desk that you think isn't going to go crazy, by all means, let them do that, and just add another column to the table here on their own. That's fantastic. But do not let them just fling anything they want. They need to fling. It's up to you. You will have been in the classroom for a couple of weeks now, so you know how it's configured to decide should they do this at their desks in small groups or if they should go back to a carpeted area. Definitely get together with your partner beforehand and decide how you want to handle the logistics of the launch zone. If you just want to send them to separate corners of the room, whatever you think will work best logistically, consult with the teacher on how you think is the best way to do this. Definitely if there's carpeted areas, that's the way to go. You know, you don't want them free for all launching. You do want some containment, because if they just start launching stuff, then, you know, it's going to devolve into chaos. But, you know, do be very clear up front with your expectations. Like, we're only launching approved projectiles. We're only launching for data collection purposes. If we catch you just launching stuff for kicks, we'll take your stuff away. We don't have to do that, though, because you're well-behaved kids. You're going to do a great job at science. So there is a procedure on the back telling them, 1, complete the front side of the worksheet with your plan. Make sure to ball up your piece of paper. Once the plan is approved, take your supplies to wherever the designated launch area is, which might be at the desk, and then take turns launching the item and measuring the distance. You can redo if something rolls out of the way and you didn't get it, then redo it. That's fine, but we want to keep things moving at a good clip. Launch each item 3 times and record it on the table below. And then take this worksheet up to the instructors. And what you guys are going to do, I was going to supply a board, but I decided not to do that because you guys don't want to drag that around. On a whiteboard or chalkboard in the classroom or on a document camera or something, just really quickly, you can either like take one of these worksheets and project it on the wall or hand draw it or stuff, but start compiling all the data. And all you're going to do is for each object, just put a dot at the distance they flew for all of the trials the whole class did, because this will give us a nice bar. And what we're looking for here in the data is we're going to get sort of 2 pieces of information we can see visually here. They're going to record the actual distances up here, but visually we want to get an idea of like, 1, just which one seems to be going the furthest, farthest, it's further, it's not further, consistently, and also what is the variance. So you might have something that like, oh, the bead goes really far sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't go very far at all, so you get a much wider range. You might have something that the large pom-pom doesn't go very far, but it's much more accurate and precise. It's much more precise. It has a lower variance. You don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that with the kids, but you do want to talk about like, this is important data for engineers and scientists. It's like, yes, it has the capability of going really far, but it's really inconsistent, so we might go with something that's more consistent even if it doesn't perform as really well, depending on what our needs are for a particular task. And this will show them like how to put together a data table, which a lot of them will already know, but they may not have done in this context, and a different way to represent things visually. And you should see things starting to cluster at the front of the classroom, but you might have some outliers. And if you want to take a moment to talk about outliers, that's fantastic. You might want to talk about like the cluster where about like 60% of the data points range in, because, standard deviations. But don't talk about standard deviations. Just talk about like, where, how much weight do we want to put on these outliers versus the more consistent results in the middle. It's a fun activity. The intro workshop before this shouldn't be too long. You don't want to spend too much time on that. You want to just give them a really quick punchy introduction to, the different kinds of variables. And then if at all possible, spend a little time talking with them about their project ideas. Like, who has an idea for what you're going to do for a project already? Who has, that's pretty well developed and you know how you're going to test it? Who has kind of an idea of what you want to do, but you're not sure how to test it? And you might want to just work those out with them, with the whole class, giving advice. That can be really helpful, because sometimes kids just have sort of a vague idea of, like, they want to do something with a catapult, but they don't know what. So do they want to look at different projectiles? Do they want to look at different catapult configurations? What is the goal and purpose, and help them to shape that a little bit. Sort of workshopping that out loud with a couple of kids can help other kids figure out how to proceed. Or, work it out. Also talk with your partner and teacher. A different approach may work for your class. They may be working on group projects, so it might be good to have them get in their groups and start working on, we have a number of resource worksheets on the webpage. If the teacher wants you to bring some of those in for the kids to work on, then you can go around and help sort of guide them through that process. It's really kind of up to you guys, but I do like to leave some time in this workshop to actually get them thinking and working on their particular projects that they want to do. And even if they're not going to do a project to bring to the fair or for class, still have them going through the exercise of doing that. I can throw some things here so you can see they don't go very far. They tend to go rather vertical. That one bounced. Interestingly enough, this pony bead, my office has not very low ceilings, but low-ish, and the pony bead actually has a habit of hitting the ceiling, but it doesn't go too far. It rolled and it's about like 7 feet away. So it's best if they can launch on the floor, because if they launch from their tabletop, they're going to get a little extra distance as the object continues to, fall along its trajectory, which could skew the results if some are shooting from desktop and some are not. If they're all shooting from desktop, then it's fine, but it is generally speaking better to have it on a flat surface. All right, thanks a lot. And it's going to take me like forever to turn the video off because my computer just went to sleep. Something it's been doing a lot since I upgraded the operating system. I really hate High Sierra. Thank you, Apple. Thank you.